So the first thing we're going to start to build in our trash compactor are the foundations and the walls. So I'm going to get my toys up and I'm going to go to my simple toys. And you should be able to access these whatever playset you've got. So you should be able to all these shapes. And we're going to get the flat walls and the flat flooring as well. So we're going to get across here and we'll bring this object across. Now I'm going to keep it away from the ground area because we're going to build this separately and I'm going to delete the ground off. And if you saw from the clip from the previous one in stage 1, I had some sections pull away. So I'm just going to put my 3 blocks going across. Okay. And I'm making sure there is a gap in between. And then I put the other 3 walls. So this is the size of the trash compactor. Now if I pick the little squares, what I'm going to do now is fill in these squares. So it's exactly the same width, so I filled those in. And I'm just putting these items here. And the good thing is these items stay here, no change there. I'm going to leave that gap out, because in that gap, that's where we're going to put the various walls. So going back to my toys, I'm now going to the walls, and I'm making sure they fit flush. They're not slightly to the edge, so I put them on the either side. And I'm leaving that gap so we can have another wall come in and push all the items across. Because one thing I found is that when you move 2 areas together, your character doesn't actually get squashed, it just gets pushed through it. It becomes transparent. So I had to find a way to make sure that your character could possibly die. So I'm just putting all the actual walls that I need, and these walls that I'm building here are actually going to be the ones that move. Okay, so I'm flying through here. Now I've done this several times just to make sure I've got the layout, the area that I require. So we've now got the units that we've got to build. And strangely enough, I'm going to put in some extra units at the end here. And the reason for that is I'm going to structure all our logic outside the trash compactor. So you should never see this. And this area is where I'm going to store all those items, because it's going to get quite messy. And as long as we put them in a certain place, we'll be able to organise those. So let's go back through our toys and let's go to our creativity toys. And you've got it. We need the path creator. Okay. So I'm looking for the middle object, so the middle square. So everything's bang in the middle, so that's the middle one. So the wall's going to come from this side, and it's not going to go into the middle. It's going to go to the edge of the strip. Okay, so there's got to be a gap between the 2. When they clashed together, it didn't work too well. I needed to have the gap, so I put that either side, and again circled out, and I've dragged across and done the other road. So they're 2 separate paths. Okay. And now I need 3 paths for each of these boxes. So making sure it's in the middle of the square, I'm going to do my green to one side, make sure it goes into the middle, that's it. Circle out to a completely fresh one. You notice it's not linked, these are totally separate. And I'm making sure they fit exactly where the squares are, so there should be 2 gaps between each one. Okay, so it's too far there. Excellent, so they're the path tools that I'm going to need at this particular part. And then the last piece we're going to have is in the middle here. This path is going to start from here and go all the way to the end and push all the junk into space. And if you haven't pressed the button, you're going to get knocked out in space as well. So that is our path tools, everything that we need. So what we need to painfully do now is change the settings of these. So what I'm going to do is get my little button. Now these buttons, if you've seen my other clips, I'm using to help me set them up, but I'm going to delete them when I've finished. Okay, and depending on what I'm going to use here is I'm going to get a logic gate, because I don't know when I wanted to reset them. So I'm going to bring my logic gate, and it's the very first logic gate I'm going to use. So I'm going to stick this to the far left hand side. Okay, and what this logic gate is going to help me do is it's going to help me reset all the components once I've had them. Now if you've seen any of my other clips before, you see me use this quite regularly to check that I've got the items in the right place. So what we can do now is we can set up the logic and go through these items and pick those across. So I'm going to go into Spark mode now by pressing the R1 button on the controller. And what I'm going to do here is on that button, when pressed, can you insert a signal into this logic gate? In my other clips, sometimes I don't use logic gate, but it's handy in this one because there's a number of stages and we may need to call on this at some other stage. So we've now inputs a signal into that logic gate. So on this logic gate now, I'm going to say, right, on output that gate, can you, and let's go to each of our path tools. So I'm going to click on that path tool, and can you reset and play? Okay, so that's one path, and I'm going to have to do it for every single one. So go back to my logic gate, new logic connection, on output, go across to the next one, and then go reset and play. Now I'm just doing the order that tend to be creative. You can do them any order which you want, but we're going to do all the parts. So we've got to do every single one. So new logic connection, on output from the signal from that logic gate. Can we go to that path? And can we reset and play? Okay, and painfully you've got to do the others. Now it does take a while to set up this, but as you saw from the first clip, the effects are quite good and it's worth it. So keep resetting and playing. And a couple of times when I've tried this out, it didn't work, even though I set the logic up. And I find if you set the logic up and you know it's correct, save it before testing it. Sometimes I find that you have to reload it up every time and then it works. It won't do it the first time. So we've now got all this logic all set up on this screen here. And just do the final one on output. We can reset the logic. So that now has got everything set up, ready to go. So now I can link all those items to those tools. So I've got everything set up for this particular group. So all those paths now are connected through to our system, yeah? So what we can do now is, I'm going to now connect all our objects to it. Now I tried to use this to the spark tool and I found it a bit tricky to do it. I found in this particular case it's easier to do this to the wands because each object is going to move. So I'm going to now link these walls to the particular path. So connect the object, right click, connect to path, and now the object is moving back and forth. But you can see here is I can quite easily aim that and go to the properties of that object. And I'm going to change this property of this speed to, I think I had it about 20. 20 was quite a good speed, and I need to make sure the path movement is back and forth. But before I do that, I'm going to move this across, and you want it 12 because it goes. You're basing them on the one path. So I moved it to the left, horizontal to left 12 or negative 12. Set it back and forth. That item is now set, and if I let go, that's moving. Highlight the next one, point to the path tool. That now moves up across. That's going back and forth. See, it's a lot easier to aim than if I was stayed in my spark mode. So if I go to properties here, I'm going to change the speed of that back to 20. But now I'm going to move it along the horizontal on the opposite side. So I'm going to go to my horizontal setting, and I'm going to move it the other way. Now just be aware, sometimes it doesn't, depending on how much stuff you've already got in your toy box, you won't see it actually moving like you did there on the screen. So don't worry, still make the adjustment, and this is where we've got our button for. So as you'll see, as I've got no other objects in my toy box, you see the movement occurring, but occasionally you may put it on and you may not get that movement to occur. It has registered it, but you do need to hit that reset button. Right, so toy box path, I can change the speed of that to 20, and also the final thing with this is I don't need to adjust it, it's in the center, so all I've got to do now is just do back and forth. Okay, so those walls now are moving back and forth. So if I shoot my target, that wall is now set and they're all moving together. And a slow pace wall to give you time to react. So let's go and do the other wall. So highlight the wall, go to path connection, link it to the path. That's moving way too fast, so we can highlight that and let's change that. Go to properties. So do exactly the same, change speed to 20 and move it along the horizontal 12. Yeah, so I'm going to do 12 the other side, so plus 12 and negative 12. Now take your time when you do all these, because you've got to make sure you tick them off in the routines that we've got planned. Yeah. So connect these all up. The tricky bit is with the logic gates, and that comes in a bit later on. So this is all relatively quite simple, but at least you can see the trash compactor come into shape. You can actually see it working. So I'm going to change this now to 20, and again move this the opposite direction. So speed to 20. Go down to the horizontal, do my negative 12. There you go, that's that section. Right. Movement, make sure the movement is back and forth. And if you've seen my other clips, it's very much like the lift one as well. We're going to use the same logic here, but the problem we've got here, there's so many elements to it, you can get a bit lost and confused, so just be wary of these. Alright, let's do the last one. Go to properties. Change speed of that to 20. And because we did all that setup with that button and the logic gate, when I hit the button it will all reset and sync back in. And that's the cool bit about it. So that's why we need this button. At the end of this we'll delete that button out, but now we've got our collapsing walls. Our walls are now coming in and it's now a proper trash compactor. Now, in the various tests that I've done, I have noticed that they do slightly become out of sync. So the more time you keep coming in and out of the room, they will come out of sync. So one will get one further to another place. So it's always a little bit tricky, which is why we may need that reset occasionally to happen. Right, so we need the other 3 tiles now. And after I've built this test, I probably would have done the blocks every other block instead of doing all 3 in one chunk, because then you could have done stepping stones to jump. But I'll let you play around with that. So they're my 3 walls. I'm just sticking them in the place. So I'm now going to connect these objects to the middle path. So I create these objects up here. I find it easier than the Spark motor when you assign objects to a path. So let's link this first one, connect it to that path. Okay, connect to path, and it's moving quite rapidly. But the good thing here is when you were doing your aim, you can see it quite easily. And the property here is exactly the same as the other one. So with the floor ones, we don't have to change anything. So all we've got to do is the speed at 20. And all we've got to do is change the loop to move back and forth. Alright. And we do the next one. Now I wanted to make sure we had everything in this clip, so this is one of the reasons why I did the preview first before going straight into making it, because you can't rush this, and I wanted to cover every element so you'll see the whole thing all come together, and this way you'll get to see how you put it together, not just one element and then left to your own devices. This is how all the items have come in, and it was quite complicated, so it was easy to break it down into a number of clips, which, like as I've already mentioned, you guys have requested me to split my clips up. And we'll just do the last one. So I click the last one on, click to the path, it shoots along very fast. Highlight it again, go back to the properties of the actual item, change the speed to 20 and do it back and forth. Okay. There we go, so they're all moving back and forth nicely, they move back. So the last one we need to do is this wall here. So we'll click on the wall, new logic path, point it down to our tool here. And that now moves along there. All we've got to do with this one is tell it to move back and forth. So we now all have our objects moving back and forth. So again, speed to that. I think I made that a little bit quicker actually. I'm getting 30, otherwise it was too slow while I was waiting for it to do. We'll set that to back and forth. So now all our trash compartment elements are complete, and we now need to see how we get them to stop. So with all the elements done and moving across, we're going to need some tools and some components. So what I need to do here is I need to bring in some of my favourite tools. My second favourite tool is the logic gates. And if you've seen my Death Star lift clip, you've already used this tool before, so this will become familiar. The only problem here is we've got a lot more of these now that we're going to use. So let's find my logic gate here, and I need 2. Okay, 2 logic gates. The first one, and I'm spacing them out but trying to keep them in order. Okay, I need 1 for the walls, 1 for the floor, and the third one for the final column to go through. I also need another set of logic gates. And these again, I need 1 set to stop the logic gates and another set to start the logic gates. Okay, so that's why I have 2 everything. So each pair that we've got has 2 logic gates with it. So with the first one, this is the thing that turns this stops the walls from moving. Okay, so this particular one is for the side walls. So we're going to do a new logic connection on output. I would like to stop these walls. So let's go to the green path tool, and can we turn the thing off? Okay, so on the other one again, new logic connection on output of this gate. Right, I would like you to turn these walls off. Okay, so that turns the wall off on the screen. Yep. So what turns the other ones off? So in this case again, then there's 3 to here. So new logic connection. Okay, on output, I want you to turn off these floor. So turn those off. So second column again, new logic connection, output, and I want you to turn those off. So these are all on the output setting of the logic gate. So the first one is for the sidewalls, the middle one is for the floor, and the end one is for the back wall. Okay, turn them off. So that's what turns all those off. And the final one here, which is this one here, which is the back wall one. So new logic connection, there's only one item here, so on output. Now make sure it is on that option, not the gate or the wall. Wait till I'm making sure I'm pointing to the logic gate, and can I turn that off? So the big question is, how do I turn these three walls off? What happens when I turn them off on this screen? So I've got the logic gates on here, but what actually turns it off is where they're at certain points. Okay, so on this here, on this point here, when you reach that point, it turns those items off. So if I go onto that and go into that logic, the path tool, and go to new logic connection, and I have to scroll all the way down and choose where point is reached by object on path, yeah, and I will input a signal in there. Now at first glance I thought I needed to do it on both sides, but because they're both logged, when those walls now come to the edge, you'll see as they come across now, when they touch that edge piece, they'll now come off on the screen. So you'll see here it comes on that side. And now the walls have stopped. Okay. And you'll see on that last one, I also need it on the other point, is when you point to the end on those options there, I need to also to stop it. So when it comes in, I need you to stop the actual item. So I also did it on 2 points. I did it on the front point and the end point. I'm now doing the floor one, and I'm saying there, when object path reach tool, so keep looking at the clips on the video, I'm then going to input a signal. Okay, and the other point is when it reaches the edge, yes, when it reaches that end one, I'm going to input a signal. Now I don't need to do the other two bricks purely on the fact is that when the other stops, they'll all stop. Yeah, so that's the quite a cool thing, but you have to do the beginning point and the end point, and that's another reason why I didn't put number of points between each section. And the last one here, same thing again, new logic connection. When point reaches long path, can we input a signal into that gate? And that should make that item stop on the screen. Now I don't need the other one because this path doesn't stop, it goes straight there and comes straight back. So when this item stops, it's now finished on the screen, but that item never stops. The walls come in, they need to stop, the floor needs to open up, they need to stop, but the back wall goes straight forward and comes straight back. So the next question is, great, we now got our walls stopping, but how the hell do we start them? And that's what these logic gates do. So what we're going to say is when we output a signal from this first set logic gate, I'd like you to switch those walls back on. So I'm going to tell you here, can you put them back on the screen? Okay, that side, and then obviously the second gate does the second item. So new logic connection, on output of the second thing, can we go across and can we turn those walls on? Okay, and then same with this option, when we turn this, when we input a signal in here, so new logic connection, when input, sorry, on output of that wall, can we turn on, so can we turn on that item? But the thing is I need to turn all of them on, so this has got 3 connections to it. So new logic connection, on output from this option, can we go across and can we turn that on, and we need to do the final one. But also when you're doing your toy boxes, make sure that you've got all the points lined up perfectly. Yeah, make sure they're all in a nice line so you can follow where they've gone and you don't just have them scattered anywhere else. And the last one now, on output of that gate, make sure you don't pick the wall and you don't pick the other logic gate, or put it too close. Make sure you did pick that part tool. I want to make sure that it is the connector that we're going for, so it can be easy, you can miss that. Yeah, I wanted to stress that when I did this clip. So when you put that on, so when from there, so new logic connection, on output, make sure we pin that particular area, that green one, there you go, that's the one we want, the green item, and can we turn that back on? So we've now got our walls set up, we've now got the logic that triggers the walls to make them all come in, and we've got the movements all coming through on the screen. Yeah, so these will all move in. So what we need to do now is, what trigger those events? What happens when they come? Well, the first thing we did, we wanted the walls to come in first. So when it reaches this point, yeah, that means we've done the first section. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do another logic on there and say on new logic connection, when we reach this point, can we now turn on the floor options? So we can now say, can you now set that on as well? So can we input a signal into here? So we know when those walls hit the end, turn them on, and that will now make the floors open. Okay, so the floors will now open up. So when the floors reach this particular point, we now the floor is open on the screen. So we can do a new logic connection on there and say, right, when we reach point path, can we open the bottom section and can we open up the third part? So we now create like a daisy chain effect, right? And it's very important you do that daisy chain on when it inputs a signal that will start those items together. So now we find these all now trigger the items together on the screen. So the tricky bit now was we've got the walls all moving in, floorboards opening, the back wall comes across. But the thing was, how do I get the actual item to retract? Now the back wall, we don't care that it gets to the very end. So if you look at here, this yellow point here in the middle of the floor, just by the green one, that is where the back wall has come to the end. So when it reaches that point, we know that it's done its job. Everything's been chucked into space. So I'm going to use that as a trigger, okay? But the other thing is I need the other walls to remove back first. So what I'm going to bring in now is I'm just going to bring in a time delay. And I played around with this for ages trying to work out how to do this. And I didn't want to happen instantly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a time delay out. And what you'll notice here is I'm positioning this in between these two sets of logic gates. Because this is actually going to control the floorboards and it's going to control the back walls. So I'm positioning it so I know that they are related. Yeah. Now this time delay is that when it comes back, I'm going to set them off again. Yeah. So what I'm going to say here is that this logic here will trigger off the floors to start moving again. So let's go to the properties of that, and I'm going to say probably give it a few seconds. I'm not too sure when I set it to. Let's do 2 seconds. I think too drastic. Okay, on 2 seconds, yeah. What I'm going to do there is I'm going to input a signal. Yeah, so new logic connection. When delay complete, can you fire this item up? Now the walls are already in, so when you turn it back on, they will start moving backwards and doing the back and forth moment. And if I do on another connection to the other one and saying on delay complete, what happens there is I input a signal there and the floorboards will then move back into the floor. So all I need to do now is trigger that timer. And what I'm saying is when the end wall hits that particular point, I want it to wait a few seconds. So on there when it reaches that point, so my logic there is new logic connection. When it reaches the path, I'm going to move back and I'm going to tell it to start that timer, which will then reuse the logic gates that I've already done. And now all the walls start moving backwards. So what's left now to happen is to actually test this to see if the actual thing works. So the next question is what triggers the walls? And this first logic gate is what triggers everything. When you switch these on, when those first walls start, that's what sets all the motions going across and making the walls going back and forth. So that is our key point. Now, depending on our game, I don't know when I'm going to start the game or when I'm going to trigger the actual items are. So I don't mess with the logic, and we know it's working on the screen. I'm going to create a brand new logic gate, and I'm going to put that at the side of this, because this is what says when I fire a signal here, this is my start point. Okay? So I don't confuse the different items. I keep the logic gates do their own job. This logic gate here is going to be my starting point. Okay, so I'm going to put a logic gate in here and say when I fire a signal from there into the other logic gate, I want you to start the movements to occur. So I'm going to go across, and by having a logic gate, by the way, we can close it so you can't trigger it again until another job is done. So I'm going to go across into here, and in this particular case I'm going to say right, new logic connection, on output, can you input a signal into gate, and that starts the walls to move, which like you've just seen will have that knock-on effect but make them all across. Now to test it here, I need another button. Yeah, so I need another button to trigger off that effect. Now like I said, these buttons are going to be deleted off when they're done. So I'm just going to bring another button, stick it over the top of this one at the top as my tester. Okay, so I'm just going to put it there. Looks horrendous, but it is to test to see mechanics working on the screen. So I'm going to go onto that particular option, new logic connection, when pressed, can you input a signal into that logic gate? Now when input into there, that is saying start, and that will then start the whole movement occurring. Now when you've set this all up, I'd advise you in your test to then save your level. Yeah, save it, and then reload it back up. Because occasionally I was doing this and I think I'd got it wrong, and it doesn't work every single time. So what I'll do here is, you'll see quite quickly at the bottom it says game saved. I will then reload it back up to test it. Okay, so if I now shoot the top button, this should activate the walls. So press the fire button, the walls start moving, which is great. So I've now got my trash compactor walls coming in. When they reach the point on the wall, these walls will now stop, and they'll get the signal to stop, and it will then fire the signal with the floorboards to start moving. And then when they get to the end, they will stop, and they will then trigger the back wall behind me to start moving, which now comes in closer. Okay, it will now push me off that screen. And there we have our trash compactor working. Now hopefully if it all works through, if I just jump up in the air and I come back, it should go back in 2 seconds. They all start moving backwards and they all start locking down. And it's all moving across. So we now have our trash compactor working on the screen. That's our stage 2 done. Hope you like it. Look for the next one. Cheers guys.